My name is Clement Stephen Dachet, and I come from Nigeria. I'm 38 years old and married to a beautiful Danish lady. I work for Mission Afrika. I've been working for Mission Afrika since 2009. My move into Denmark has opened me up to an entirely new culture, one that I have not experienced before. I mean, coming from an African background means, of course, that I come from a different culture, a culture that is different from Denmark in many respects. And looking at culture as a way of life, the way of life of Africans and Nigerians is such that we are very communal. We depend on one another quite a lot. And I mean it in the sense that your identity is defined in the context of the entire community. So there's very little room for being just an individual. And I come from a culture where hospitality plays a very huge role. And being hospitable to visitors, to strangers, is part of our culture. To the point where if you had a guest in your house, you owe it to him or to her to provide lunch or dinner, even without them sending a prior notice to you that they were coming. And I also come from a culture where it is very hierarchical compared to the Danish society. It's very hierarchical in the family, very hierarchical in the place of work, and very hierarchical in religious institutions. For example, the father and the mother play a very important role in the sense that they are the main leaders of the home, and they're always right. They know what is right. They know what to tell the children, to do. So there's very little room for dialogue between parents and children over how they should lead their lives. And the same applies to the place of work. The boss is always right, and the boss has the power over his subjects, and the same applies in the system of government. It's very hierarchical. So coming to Denmark, I encounter a rather opposite of that kind of society. There is a great degree of individual independence in Denmark. People belong to their families, of course, but they do not depend on them in the same way that Africans depend on each other. People are more individual in the sense that they can make their decision and be responsible for their personal decision, not necessarily minding what the community thinks about it. As long as what they're doing is not harmful to the community, they're entitled to their own rights. I mean, I find it very interesting how early young people leave home and begin to live on their own. Some people at the age of 16, they've already moved out of their home. While it's not the same in Nigeria. You depend and you leave home at an older age. And the other thing is that Denmark is a non-hierarchical society, in the sense that when I first walk into an office, I would normally want to see who the boss is. But it seems like almost everyone is the same. It takes you time to really know what the titles of people are, what position they occupy. I think it's more about the teamwork, about achieving a goal, rather than titles and big positions. So it creates a platform where people are able to freely contribute, whether they occupy a very low position or a high position. It's about idea. And I think also when it comes to hospitality, Denmark is hospitable in a different way than it is in Africa. Things are planned way ahead of time. You have to plan a visit to someone 3 weeks, 3 months, sometimes 1 year before you visit them, and it has to be planned, the kind of food you'll be eating. So you have to be planning to the system of the family or the system of your friends to be able to experience hospitality, which is very different from the African culture, that you can appear at any time, and your host would normally just prepare things for you because they think they owe it to you. And I think another interesting aspect of the Danish society that I have come to experience is a place of religion. Unlike my own society in Africa, in Nigeria, where I come from, we're very mixed. We have a great deal of Muslims and a great deal of Christians, and we also have a number of people who adhere to the African traditional religion. In that sense, we are by nature in our society very pluralistic. But whether we've been able to learn to live together is another question. Compared to Denmark, it's by its foundation a very Christian nation. But on the other hand, faith is not such a thing that people bring to the public square. People are more private in terms of how they display their religion. So it's more of seeing religion as a private matter as opposed to seeing it as a public matter, which indeed is very different from the way we practice religion in Nigeria. People bring it out, it's a 24-hour thing. You take it home, you take it to your work, you take it to your school, and sometimes you treat people based on religion. It's a religion that is displayed on the car, used through bumper stickers. People can play music and play preachings, and everywhere they are. So it's a society saturated with religion as well, which is very different from the Danish society. And I think also in terms of religion, when one looks at Denmark as a society, it's more of a secular society as opposed to the earliest understanding of Denmark being a Christian society. There are many people who more and more do not identify themselves as Christians, but they would rather see themselves as non-religious or atheists. And in that society, it doesn't necessarily create a fracture between the religious people and the non-religious people. So people kind of learn to accept each other as Danish people, as opposed to what religion they adhere to or do not adhere to. And that is very different from my own society. In attending a Danish church, I also find that being a pastor, I'm a pastor from Nigeria, the way we conduct our church service, the atmosphere in the church service is very different also. In Africa, there's a lot of energy during church service, and there's a lot of singing, dancing, and clapping, and people standing up and sitting down and going in front to offer their offerings. When I came to Denmark, it's a little bit more the quiet one. People sit to sing their hymns. I found that quite interesting, and they only stand up when they've been asked at some point of the service to stand up. And the singing is always very, very calm and very quiet, very reflective. And it drags on through the entire service period, which is very different from the African energetic way of singing and dancing. And also the preaching is very different. It's always timed, very short in Denmark, while in Africa, the preaching can go on and on and on. In most churches, of course, there are some churches in Africa or in Nigeria where the preaching is also timed, but of course, never shorter than the Danish one, the Danish sermons. So it's one area I experience differences in terms of how Christianity, in particular, is practiced in Denmark and also in Nigeria. I think also another growing phenomenon in a society that is so homogeneous as Denmark is also the presence of Islam. For many Danish people, it's a way they're trying to find out how to deal with other religions that they are not so used to. The presence of Islam in Denmark is a new phenomenon in a way compared to like my nation, where Christianity and Islam have lived side by side each other for a very long time. And also when you think about the fact that in Nigeria, it's where you find the highest population of Muslims and Christians living in the same country in any part of the world. So when you compare that to Denmark, where Islam is actually a minority group, but also very it's having a significant growth also. It's a challenge on how to interact, across this religious plurality that is taking place in Denmark. So almost saying in Denmark, in most cases, if you talk about integration, it's almost like you're talking about how to integrate Islam to the Danish society. Denmark is slowly moving to this challenge of defining itself as a pluralistic society. And I really hope that it's able to do a good job with that, better than Nigeria, because in Nigeria we have not been able to respect our plurality the way we should. So there is a challenge that comes with a society that is ethnically diverse, religiously diverse. Denmark is very homogeneous. So as Denmark steps into not just religious diversity, but also beginning to have a growing number of minority ethnic groups, that I really hope that Denmark would be able to come up with a model that really would help in accommodating and promoting a society that is diverse, and as well there's a sense of peaceful coexistence. So people who come from other culture, definitely we have to respect the fact that we've been a guest in a way, and when you have a guest, they learn to find out what the rule of your house is and find ways to respect what you're doing. But also guests can also be helpful in contributing to their host. And so I believe that people who come to Denmark from other cultures, from other religious background, come with certain dynamics to Denmark. And I think that there is such great opportunity that both the Danes and people who come from foreign countries like myself, we can learn from each other. I mean, I have learned so much. I've learned the Danish language. I've also learned I'm learning the Danish mentality, how to respect time, how to treat people. But we must continue to create that platform of fellowship. And Danes will have to accept the reality that there are people who live here that are from other parts, and it's a reality that will not just go, but it has to be accepted, and they have to accept that the world is bigger, not just the world around them, but the world as a whole is bigger than what they think and what they feel, and it's only on a platform of fellowship, of interaction with one another, and understanding truly who we are. Rather than being afraid of each other from a distance. While the immigrants are here, but they can also be a door, a window to their own country, to their own culture. So it is really an opportunity and a privilege to be able to share with you a little bit of my life and my experience in the Danish society as an African. Thank you.
Our mission with Africa is to pray and work together to bring freedom, hope and justice to